Hello everyone, my name is Alexander Vanoni, and this is the second video that I will be making on my YouTube channel. I am pretty new to this. This is pretty much the first time that I will ever make a video this long about this subject in front of this many people, which isn't that many people because, I have like one subscriber, but that's okay, we're getting there. And I'm going to be talking about the coming crises over the next 10 years, specifically 3. The reason that I'm doing this is because I think it is important. And regardless of whether or not you're watching this, it will affect you. Primarily, probably if you live in a developed country, because that is where the crises that I'm going to be mentioning are going to show up the most. And I think it's very important to discuss these issues, how they are going to impact you, and what you personally can do to try and mitigate this, both from an individual perspective and from a larger macro perspective. So, the main things that I'm going to be talking about are, number one, is going to be sorry, this is not a very good pen, let me change that. Number one is going to be the fertility and aging crisis. So, it is no real secret that around the world there are many nations, such as the US, China, South Korea, Japan, that are experiencing a rapid decline in the number of people that are going to be able to continue working, and a rapid increase in the number of people that are going to be retiring and moving into a position where they are no longer contributing to the economy, they are taking away from it. And that's not a bad thing, that's just how demographics work. So for example, in America, 1 in every 5 Americans aged 65 or older will be driven into retirement by 2030. That's around 73 million people, which is huge. The American population right now, I think, is around 360 million. I'm going to double check that, because if I'm wrong, that will be very embarrassing. 340 million. Okay, well, I guess that's very embarrassing for me. So, 70 million of 340 million people, that is a very, very large portion of the American economy. And we haven't really been focusing on how to try and fix that. Because I'm just going to break this down logically so that it makes sense to a large number of people. Let's say that you work at a steel plant factory and you have an engineer there and he's worked there for a very long time. And let's say in 5 years in your steel plant factory, you have 200 employees, let's say 40 of your senior engineers leave. That is, unless you have found some way to replace 40 of your most senior, most experienced engineers, that is extremely bad for you. And you can pretty much just copy-paste this kind of thing across every single industry around the world. Now, people retire all the time, right? People have been getting older throughout all of history. This is known. The problem is that our fertility rates have not been at sustainable levels to try and match that. And you probably know this already because most of the world is talking about it. So I was told that doing graphs is a good idea. So just as a little reference, the fertility rates are around from like 1970. I just want to say a lot of the statistics that I will use are roughly correct. They are mainly to demonstrate a point. If you ever doubt me or wish to do your own research, I strongly encourage you to do so, because I will probably be off, just like with the American population statement, by a little bit, but I don't think that takes away from the point that I'm trying to make. So I apologize if I get specific statistics wrong, but I'm going to try to make the point anyway, and I have done a substantial amount of personal research on this topic. So, yeah. Anyway, fertility rates in 1970 they were around up here, which was, I think it was like 4 to 5 births per family, or children per woman, something like that. And so let's say this is like 4.5, and let's say this is 2. Now, 2 I guess that's more like that. 2 is the amount that you need to, 2.1 is the number of people you need to sustain the population, because you're accounting for, general accidents like dying to cancer or getting hit by a car, things like that. So 2.1, right here, is the level needed to sustain the current population that you have. So pretty much every single major developed country in the world, from the US, China, South Korea, Japan, Germany, England, Canada, and various others, after the 1970s, they all saw a rapid decrease in fertility rates. And this was for a variety of reasons. Anyone who boils this down to one factor is lying to you, and you can listen to them, but you should understand that something like this doesn't just happen for one reason. One reason was the wider availability of contraception and the wider availability of abortion. It was also because there was a slight population scare, but there are so many factors to consider. The point is, this is the reality that we live in. So, over the past, I guess I'm just going to do this with my hands, because, over the past 50 years, while our fertility rates declined, the average age of people has kind of just risen. And I think right now, and I could be wrong about this, but it's around 38.5. Don't quote me on that. But it could be around 39. Anyway, it's increasing year by year. And this is a serious problem, because we haven't effectively modernized all areas of industry. And because we haven't done that, we don't currently have a way to replace these people. And so that's the big one. The way that this will affect you is that this won't really affect you right now at the time of watching this video. It will a little bit, but you don't really feel anything or any of the effects of this at the moment, because right now we're still living off of the fact that these people are still working and they are still contributing to the economy. So it's good times, right? Problem is, most developed nations take care of their elderly in retirement. And the expense of that, that's going to be very expensive for most countries. So, how do you pay for a new expense if you're the government and you don't currently have the money for it? Well, you tax your people. It is pretty much universally accepted that everyone hates paying taxes. Probably you, if you're watching this. From the research that I looked at, which was done from a variety of different statistic sheets. I used Google Stats, I used English Gov website, I used US Gov website. You can take a look at them as well. General predictions. I also listened to a variety of senators. You can listen to the Republican known as David Schweikert if you are right-wing, and you can pretty much listen to most Democrats on that issue. I encourage you to do so. They mostly know what they're talking about and are aware of the issue, even if limited things have been done to try and solve it. But the general prediction is at the minimum a double-digit increase in terms of percentage to your tax bracket. So if you are paying 35% or 25%, you would instead be paying 45% or 35%. That's at the bare minimum, assuming there is no recession, assuming there are no disasters outside of that. But it's also assuming there's no miracle technology, but I'll get into that later. So, the second one, which is not very good, and I don't have a wipe, so I am just going to have to use my hands again, and that's unfortunate. I'm not sure if the camera can see this, but oh well, it's fine. Number 2 is going to be national debt. National debt is pretty catastrophic, has been pretty catastrophic for most of history, and you'd think that nations would have figured out a way to deal with that better, and we have actually. Much economic theory has been done into how to properly manage debt. We have much more intelligent people working on the issue right now, but that doesn't change the fact that we are in a significant amount of debt as a global collective. The United States has 36 trillion in debt, which is, I think it's like 91% of debt to GDP ratio. And then China is at 16 trillion in debt. And their current GDP is 18 trillion. Germany, Japan, India, the UK, and France have like similar but varying levels. I think India is actually the one that's the best out of all of them. Anyway, it's fine. So we have a lot of debt. Now, why is that bad? Well, in general, it's bad to be in debt, but it's normal. It's actually like healthy for you as a country to take out money because then you can build things that will give you more money. And that's how the economy works. We borrow from people and we take that money and we use it to build more cool stuff. In the case of the United States, interest is, I think, the fourth most costly thing that our government spends its money on, soon to become second, which is bad. And it's bad by itself, but when you put that on top of the number of people in the world who can work drastically decreasing, it becomes really, really, really bad. Because you already have to pay back this debt. And the United States government right now is spending an absurd, truly, truly absurd amount of money just like every second to finance what it needs to do. I don't remember statistics on that because I am not as well prepared for this as I could be, but I decided to do this anyway when I wasn't as well prepared, so it is what it is. But like, for example, you've all heard of Elon Musk and Doge. Regardless of your political affiliation, and assuming that what Mr. Musk says is true, let's say that he saves $2 billion on one thing. Unfortunately, that is 2 billion of 36 trillion. And that debt is always increasing. So even if you save, inspectors generals themselves have saved 10, 50, I think in some cases like 100 billion. And that is not enough to mitigate the debt. And if anything, it isn't even enough to stop it from rising. So clearly, this issue needs major government attention to focus and work on it. So that's the second crisis that pretty much every single nation in the world is facing. And by my humble estimation, there are 6 ways that you can solve this. Now, I think it is unlikely that I don't really want to say that things will end the world because it's not good. Like at the time of COVID, it was very unhelpful for people to say, we're all going to die. No, we're not all going to die, but millions of people are going to die. And the same thing with this, we will likely not face total economic collapse. That just isn't realistic. Even in the worst states of the world economy, like the Great Depression of 2008, there were still aspects of the economy that survived, and people were able to live, even if it was under terrible conditions, and even if it set the conditions for the Nazi Party rising in Germany, and oh my god, I can't say that, but it's fine, I don't care. I'm not doing this for money anyway. The economy still survived. We still survived. Most people in the world will probably still survive. Most people in the world probably will not be drastically, catastrophically affected by this. Probably. And you could be badly affected by it, but it's fine. But anyway, point that I'm trying to make is that this is a real problem, but it's not going to murder you tomorrow. It could murder you in 15 years, but we can get onto that later. So anyway, the 6 things that I believe we can do or are already being done. Number 1 is inflation, or, printing money. Print money. Number 2, I wrote this down because I have notes, is you can increase taxes. And let's just talk about these 2 for now. I already mentioned them, but this is what I reckon it's probably going to be the most of. There isn't just one way to solve this. You're going to need to do more than one thing. But realistically speaking, the United States is not going to default on its debt. So what's it going to do? Well, probably the current administration and the Republican Party in general, regardless of what you think of them, have a religious distaste or fanatic distaste for increasing taxes for everyone, which in some ways is rooted in some real economic theory that if you stifle the means for a business or individual to get more wealthy and prosperous, you can stop them from taking more business opportunities. I'm not here to talk about the politics of the Republican Party, but they are the current ones in charge, so they're probably not going to do this one. Inflation under Biden was high-ish. Definitely not as high as it could be. But let's say in 4 years that the Republican Party doesn't do either of these things. Well, there is a graph that I'm going to make and that I'm going to come back to a lot, which is like, if we assume that this is a graph of general prosperity of a country, which is a terrible graph and very misguided and has so many different factors about it that you can't even quantify. And I can hear you saying this is a stupid thing to do, but it demonstrates my point very well. So let's say that this is the graph of the United States, right? 2008, and then rise, COVID. So let's say that we're like here right now. There are many different ways that this can go. If nothing happens, well, nothing happens, right? Everything is fine. We keep the status quo. The problem is, because of the debt and the fertility crisis, at a certain point, something will happen. And if you do nothing about it, it's going to be pretty bad. By pretty bad, probably 20 to 25% increase for you in taxes. Probably. Do I know that? No. That's what people smarter than me have said who I listen to. I'm not an economist. I'm a cybersecurity major, but I figure it's a good idea to talk about these kinds of things. So, we fall off pretty badly, and generally in congruence with human history, we bounce back and things start to go well again, right? But just because things go terribly and we do better after they go terribly doesn't mean that we should settle for things going terribly from the outset. So, we do nothing and we end up in a situation like this. This is assuming there is no war, there is no recession, there is no outside external factor that affects anything. The status quo has remained. By the way, this is going to be offset by these two solutions right here. Only these two solutions. And this is going to be offset by like the general increase in global production. Like I think from 2013 to 2014 to 2023, the global economy grew by like 40% to like 100 trillion from 70 trillion. Something like that. Anyway, generally, the level of our technology and our production always increases year by year. Or decade by decade. So if this is around like 2030, by 2035, hopefully we're like on the right track again. Those years are wrong, but it's fine. They're just to portray an example. Yeah, but what I would recommend as an individual of the world and a citizen of the United States, even though I'm talking with a British accent, but I can talk an American one if you want. So I'm going to do that. Let's say that we just take the bullet right now, right? That we increase taxes and we increase inflation and look, oh, life sucks for a little bit. Life sucks. But overall, we mitigate the crisis a lot better. And in 10 years, you're not upset. And like it's this disparity, well, let's say, just going back to the straight up point better. Let's say that this disparity is what we're trying to avoid. And once again, that's assuming no war, no recession. Now, gambling with the world economy is a bad idea. As I've said before, the Great Depression and the 2008 crash are excellent examples of this. So let's say that your house is already, you've got a small fire, but instead of putting it out, you just leave it. And it's not going to spread, but you'll deal with it eventually. But let's say that you eventually decide to deal with it, and you go to get your bucket of water, and someone poured it out, and you go back to your fire, and you can't put it out. Well, that metaphor was flawed, but let's say that a recession hits in 3 years. Well, we go all the way here, and instead of it being this bad, well, we likely have one of the worst economic crises in history. And it takes us much longer to get back from that. And this right here, this probably means, this one right here, the very, very bad one, increase in retirement age, probably the annihilation of some social security funds, probably money diverted from your grandparents' hospital rooms. Like, where do you think the money will come from? The money will have to come from somewhere. And so the list of things that are non-essential is going to increase. So an injection if you have diabetes, or a wheelchair if you have some kind of muscle disease. These things will be deemed as non-essential because I guess you might not die. But we need the money because we were too afraid to tell our voters that we need to increase taxes. And I understand that there are significant economic benefits to not increasing taxes, but there are also times when you logically should do so. This is probably one of those times. And if you do it in a controlled manner, then you won't have to suffer as much in 10 years. But fortunately, I live in a democracy, which I personally, because maybe my values have been tainted by being raised in a pro-Western area and I can't see straight, and because I don't think America is the devil country, even though we have made a significant number of humanitarian crises over the years, that I can't see the truth properly. That was very long and winded, and I'm sorry, but I'm trying to illustrate my point that there are benefits to not increasing taxes sometimes, but there are some times when we should. I think this is probably one of the times that we should, because you need a strong foundation as a country to mitigate crises if they come up. We are currently living in a time where the likelihood of one of these crises drastically affecting the average person is much more likely than it was 10 or 15 years ago. As an example, the COVID situation. Donald Trump didn't prepare adequately to handle the situation, and as a result, an extra 600,000 Americans died that didn't need to die, and he oversaw the highest rate of unemployment since America started taking records over the past 80 years, something like that. But that's an example. So, as I said before, it probably won't kill you, but it could mean that if you want to have a child, you're going to have to wait an extra 10 years. Or if you get in a serious accident, or if a family member gets in a serious accident, you might lose all your savings. And the impact that would hit you will be a lot more than it was. Anyway, let's move on to 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. Number 3 is fertility rates, promoting them specifically. Now, there are a variety of ways you can do this. Some of them are very unethical. And I'm not promoting those ideas to you, dear viewer. Those would include breeding camps or making abortion illegal in a lot of cases. Well, regardless of your opinion on abortion, you can say that's unethical, but it's a divisive political decision. I'm trying to remain as impartial as possible. Increasing the cost of contraception. If you are religious, maybe you don't believe in contraception, fair enough. But yeah, or you can try and give benefits to your people. Like in Hungary, I think they're giving like $30,000 loans to their citizens if they have a child. You can get visas. Oh, no, let's not talk about that. You can get stipends from the government in some countries if you want to have a child. The general consensus that at least I have heard over the past couple years is that having a child is becoming increasingly less economically viable for many people because, well, quality or cost of living has increased, and in general, wages have not risen to match that across much of the developed world. And this is just not this is not one reason for why fertility people do not want to have children. One of many, many reasons why people don't want to have children. Among them is in Asian countries, there is a general growing feeling of self-autonomy with women and a growing discontent with misogyny in these countries, which is extremely fair, that you would not want to have a child if you feel that you are being treated as a second-tier citizen. And you're sick and tired of the people around you treating you that way. But yeah, you can do this as a government. Generally, hasn't worked very well for most countries because the larger underlying issues of cost of living generally make it more difficult. But this is something that you can do. So, number 4. Is modernization. Now, you remember the graph that I talked about before? Well, this is like probably best case scenario, or one of the best case scenarios. Let's say that a lot of people leave their jobs, and instead of no one can replace them, well, maybe now it's that one person can do the job of 2 because of an AI or a chatbot that helps them understand what the person before them did and has a very detailed log of the things that they did and is able to bring them up to speed very, very fast. Or automation is able to increase, or efficiency is able to increase over a variety of different sectors in the government and in the workplace. So, if rapid modernization occurs, the impact of these crises will be limited. As I said before, assuming no random disasters or good things occur, which brings me on to point 5, which is the miracle technology. So, I'm not sure if you've heard of this, but some people are purporting AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, to be this kind of miracle technology. And given that countries around the world are spending hundreds of billions of dollars on it, well, maybe it is just that. You probably shouldn't bet on it, though. If history has taught us anything, it is prepare for what you can reasonably prepare for that is the worst. So, our miracle technology that can not only just make up the deficit of people that we will miss, not only have such a large increase in production that we can pay off most of our debt and not have to deal with this crisis, but also just like completely boost production and we don't even have a crisis. Do I think this will happen? I think it's possible. I think it could happen. I looked a little bit into AGI and I did some research, and I think AI is very useful, and although it has many drawbacks, will be a generally positive step forward in the direction of humanity. Some people say we're very close to AGI. Some people say we're decades out. Some people say it'll never happen. So you probably shouldn't bet on it, but it might happen. And number 6 is war. The classic. War is extremely terrible for pretty much everyone, except the government and the prosperous individuals of the nation that wins. and maybe the general population of the nation that wins. But even then, it is a tough one. Because even if you win, you could have irreparable damage to, if you as an individual, maybe you lost someone in that war, or maybe your business was shut down, or maybe you had to flee. And even though your country won, your life is very, very much damaged. Anyway, I'm not here to talk about the reasons why war is terrible. Reasons why, yeah. I'm here to tell you how war can fix this crisis. So, if you are a nation like India, and you put India in the middle of Africa, and their military grossly outcompetes everyone else, and they conquer 5 nations around it, well, what can they do? They can steal that nation's natural resources, and I just use India as an example of a developed country that can outperform other nations militarily. This can be copy-pasted with any nation in the world, and pretty much every nation in the world has done this at some point. You subjugate the population, you can take all their money, pay off all your loans, you can basically get a caste of workers that are second tier and that you don't really have to take care of. You can steal all their natural resources, you can steal all their bright people, and you can purely put them towards focusing on what is good for your country. Like what Russia is trying to do in Ukraine, not very successfully. Unfortunately, they were not able to annex the entire thing, and it remains to be seen if the cost in lives was worth the return on investment. But yeah, war is a big one. It's also one that works. It is, like, unless you lose, which is why a lot of nations invest in the military, which brings me on to the third national crisis that we're facing. And now I have to get rid of all of these again. That's fine. Okay. The third crisis that we are facing as a globe is rising global tensions. Yeah. I do have some statistics on this. I mean, over the past 10 years, after Iraq didn't go as promised, a lot of nations stopped investing as much in their military. But yeah, over the past 5 years, we've seen significant increase in spending from Japan, NATO nations. The US spends the most in the world, but nations like Poland, Estonia, Lithuania, even the UK, Germany are all rearming at not insane rates. I don't think they're planning on a war today, tomorrow, or the next year, but as I said at the start of this video, within 10 years, probably. And I would like to avoid that outcome because it's probably the worst realistic one, and it is becoming a more realistic one by each day. The benefits of war, from the perspective of the government that wins, are very tangible. And the caliber and quality of the weapons that we have now, obviously it's the most capable that we've ever had in history, but we also have the largest number of people in history. It is, I don't think it will ever, not ever, but I think it's unlikely that nations will devolve into total war, even if we're technically seeing that in Ukraine. Anyway, the point that I'm trying to make is that the probability of a large-scale global conflict is drastically increasing. And given that these crises are coming up, you know, some nations that are paying for a very expensive military, like, there's literally not a nation that I can name that isn't politically one-sided, but let's say China or the USA, are paying for some very, very expensive and capable militaries that are sitting around doing nothing as their economy is about to crash into the ground, and they have a get out of jail button that can drastically offset the cost of these crises. Um, why shouldn't they do it? Well, I feel like that's where we come in. Um, you can talk to people. You can make your voice known. You can try and advocate for, I would say, modernization and slight increase in taxes. I think if we start taking these things seriously now, implementing them now, there will never be a just justification for war, one that your government may be able to tolerate. Um, Maybe that's not the case, and maybe that's wishful thinking, but I am 21 years old, and I think it is my right to have somewhat well thought out but flawed ideas. So that's my conclusion. Well, that's not my conclusion, but that is those are the three primary problems that I see over the next 10 years that will drastically affect you. And to just bring up this graph again, which I like and you may think is stupid, um, general global prosperity, I think we're right here right now. And I think depending on the actions that we take, it could be real bad. We could have war. Could be pretty bad. Could have a recession. Could be okay. We could start, actually, it could still be bad. We could do nothing, but nothing happens and we deal with it by increasing taxes. We could take the bullet now and have a general return to life as it was before and keep on the same track of growth. We could take the bullet now, invest in modernization, and mostly offset the crisis, or you can go all in and you can bet on a miracle technology that will make nothing happen. I think the two most realistic options to this are increase taxes now and decrease them after 10 years. Maybe print some money at a controlled rate. You have to start investing in modernizing your government and your company or your agency if you have one, because the people that you employ are going to be leaving at much higher rates than before, and there won't be enough people to fill in the gaps. And yeah, that's it. So, how long was this? 38 minutes. Okay, well, all of you have a lovely day, and if you disagree with me or think that I am a complete moron, you can let me know. I'll be slightly disheartened, but I think I've already come to the acceptance that the internet is not exactly the most kind of spaces, but I'm doing my best. I'm just trying to do my part and get my voice out there. So, yeah, everyone have a nice day.